Hi, this is Nathan Crane, President of Integrated Health International, and I'm sitting here with Dr. Nick Delgado from the Delgado Protocol. And he's quite a researcher, quite a doctor, quite an extraordinary person who really understands health, who really gets to work with people on a one-on-one basis and has helped many thousands of people all over the world, yes?
Yes, I originally became director of the Pritikin Better Health Program at the Pritikin Longevity Center, and that was during 1978, 79, and 80. So I had an early introduction to working with hundreds of people that would come through and be put on a lifestyle program, and then we'd monitor their progress, and it's been published in medical literature and journals. Shortly after that, I set up my own health education program, and I pursued studies about health education, science, power of the mind. As a PhD, I don't prescribe medications, but I work with medical doctors and I train them and educate them. I have a blog, a forum that reaches about 26,000 physicians every month through the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and I'm certified with the American Board of Anti-Aging Health Practitioners.
Yeah, I know you're really an expert in a lot of areas, but one of the areas I really want to focus on today, which I know you have a lot of experience with, is really working with people who are facing or have gone through or who are currently going through cancer. And we know that cancer has been on the rise. We know that many millions of people around the world have cancer, and we know, according to the American Cancer Association and so forth, that over 560,000 new people just in 2013 got cancer just in the United States. And so it's a major thing, and it's something that really has been very close to my heart and very close to my own life, and it's a passion of mine to connect with people like you who are out in the field, people who are out there working hands-on. And so I'd love to hear more and have you share more about your experience in working with people and helping them with cancer.
Yeah, I think what we approach the whole issue with cancer is recognizing the importance of the immune system. And I think that we're all familiar with toxins in the environment. We realize now that we're in the most toxic time in the history of the planet. I mean, we have plastics and chemicals, xenoestrogens, pesticides. We have Fukushima and harmful radiation particles reaching our water, our food supply. So there are many things that could induce the state of cancer. Now, I think that what's overlooked, though, when you look at worldwide studies, there's certain geographic regions, and we look back through history, and we find out that there's a far bigger influence on cancer and its metabolism. And it's the macronutrients. It's the composition of the foods that most people consume on a regular basis. So I started looking at epidemiological studies. I started looking at studies in which we'd look at certain cultures where they maybe had a much lower rate of certain cancers, but they had a higher rate of other cancers. And we would try and tease out what were the different definitive factors. Looking in Japan and China and Okinawa, some of the longest lived people in the world, Bama, China, and then comparing it to the Philippines, where Asian extract, but certain protein diets tended to increase the rate of liver cancer. So we really have learned a lot about the prevention of cancer. And then, of course, I think we're all concerned, once we do develop cancer, what can we do to fortify the immune system? Because that's really where the key factors lie. And I think you've probably heard of Dr. Day, Dr. Lorraine Day, Dr. Tom Lody. And I have worked with these people over the years. We've corresponded. I've attended their programs. They've heard me speak at conferences. So we're all trying to figure this out. There is no single solution.
Right, exactly.
So I think that if we can give your viewers some tips, some really effective steps that they can do, that they can implement right away. And we talked about this briefly, and that is, what are you doing with the power of the mind? What are you going to do to influence a person to make better food selections, to exercise more on a consistent basis? And it's interesting that some cancer researchers are going, well, what's exercise have to do with cancer?
Right.
And the reality is there are published studies, particularly with marathon runners and long distance runners, or people who exert a lot of energy and have a lot of oxygen going through their system, that cancer is anaerobic. It lives without oxygen. So clearly exercise oxygenates the body's the body's cells and the circulation. It reduces triglycerides. That improves the blood flow. It vasodilates the blood vessels. So exercise is your friend, and the right kind of exercise, because if you're working on prevention, your program's going to be a little different than if you're so fatigued that you can barely get up out of bed. So that person might be in that situation where their immune system's so depressed, their metabolic disorder is setting in, and the problem of cancer is eating away at the body and using up their energy. Then maybe they're better off with a trampoline, and if they don't have good balance, a bouncing trampoline chair where they sit in it. There are things you can do to stimulate the lymphatics, which is really important also with detoxification and helping the immune system.
So you published an article some time ago called The 50 Lifestyle Factors to Achieve Good Health.
Fairly recent, actually, because I've been looking at my 35 years of research and working with clients and patients, and then certain loved ones who are very dear and close to me. And I don't think there's a person watching this that isn't either directly touched by cancer or who is challenged with it. So I wrote this paper as a starting point for people to really recognize there are certain steps that you need to pay attention to.
So obviously we don't have time to go into all 50 today. And at the Cure to Cancer conference, I'm sure you'll go into more of these.
A lot of detail.
But can you share maybe a couple of your top lifestyle factors that you've published here?
I think there's enough evidence to say that the source of protein, we've all been probably influenced from advertising and commercial interests to believe that the best source of protein is either from fish, chicken, turkey, eggs, or meat.
Right.
And the reality is that if we look at cultures where they actually get a predominant amount of their protein from, of all things, sweet potatoes, purple sweet potatoes, yams, they get maybe some brown rice and whole foods, whole superfoods that are unprocessed. These cultures definitely have the best immune system. They have the lowest incidence of various forms of cancer. And I think the best example is the China study, where Dr. Campbell published his results, T.C. Campbell, and he looked at many different regions in China and drew their blood, and collectively as villages. He actually drew all the villagers' blood and put it together and then sent it through laboratories, and they would see that the patterns of eating influenced the rate of their blood chemistries, certain cancer markers that showed up in the blood, and their rate of cancer. So we learned a lot that protein from animal products, particularly from either chicken or fish or meat, they had a much higher rate of liver cancer and various forms of colon cancer. They had various forms of lymphoma, particularly with chicken. And yet the cultures that eat more of the rice, the potatoes, the vegetables, the whole foods, the fruit, and fresh raw food, they have the lowest incidence of various forms of cancer, with one exception. In Japan, where they eat a lot of rice, they had a high rate of stomach cancer.
Oh, wow.
But what was it? They take talcum powder, white, because they want the rice to look cosmetically pretty. And so this talcum is the same place that you find that asbestos is mined in. So there was the factor. We realized, oh my gosh, if they just had simply eaten clean brown rice without the white cosmetic look, maybe they wouldn't have had the rate of stomach cancer.
Well, they take the hull off of the rice kernel as well,
it's
right?
Processed. It's white rice. It's processed, and then they sprinkle talcum powder on it.
Wow.
If you've ever noticed, you go to a Japanese store and you take the white rice and drop it on the ground, in the bag, the white, it puffs out. I mean, that's... Just get it analyzed, send it to a lab. We have, and you pick up, arsenic and heavy metals and certain things that's inherently present in these toxic cosmetic look.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think that this study proved this way, that animal proteins caused higher levels of cancer than plant proteins?
Well, they went a step further. They actually then took animals, exposed them to agents that cause cancer, and they put them on an animal-based diet, these animals, and they compared that to the animals exposed to the same cancer-causing agents, and they put them on a plant-based diet. And without exception, the groups that were given the meat-based diet had a high death rate of liver cancer and the various cancers I mentioned, lymphomas and so forth. The group given the plant-based proteins, from the yams, the sweet potatoes, the rice, the vegetables, vegetables, their immune system was enhanced so much so that they rarely died from cancer.
Wow.
So we've been able to induce and look at tumor size. We've been able to look at oxygenation of the blood. We've been able to monitor high cholesterol levels, because high cholesterol levels is inherently associated with lung cancer of all things. And Dr. Jeremiah Stamler, in his famous study that he published, he found that there was no correlation in cigarette smoking as much as there was in the total cholesterol level in meat consumption.
Wow.
So that's why the Japanese have what's called the Asian paradox. They smoke like fiends. They actually smoke a lot compared to our standards. And yet, because their diet is more, rice and vegetables, and particularly Okinawa, they eat a lot of sweet potatoes and so forth. Even if they smoke, their immune system is better under a plant-based diet that is actually able to tease out, and if they do develop cancer from the cigarette smoking, which it can trigger it, they don't necessarily die of cancer. So Dr. Ernest Winder, in his landmark studies, was the first doctor to say that cigarette smoking caused cancer, lung cancer, but then he tailed it and traced it to the cholesterol levels. He said, there's a remarkable finding here. And he went on to say that breast cancer was related to high fat in the diet, particularly oils, excess fats from meats and so forth, but even from plant fats, too much olive oil and so forth. And these people had higher prolactin levels, which is a hormone that's been known to be associated with breast cancer. When they went on a low-fat diet within 30 days, the prolactin levels reduced to safer levels, and the incidence of breast cancer in those groups was much lower, like in the example of those in Vietnam. They have a low rate. Thailand, they have a much lower rate of breast cancer than, say, in Sweden or Denmark, where they eat a pretty heavy, high-fat diet.
Wow, and so this study, was done over a long period of time and has proven that, in Asia, the other thing too, and I know you talk about this, is that especially China, they come from an ancient background of finding their medicine through herbs.
Yes.
And so, compared to Asia and China and Japan, what is the difference in people who are experiencing cancer in the United States to the people who are experiencing cancer in, say, Asia or some of these other countries?
Well, it's good that you bring that up, because what we've looked at is certain herbs that have been used for literally thousands of years, and we've seen where there's some healing powers. I think particularly because it does fortify the immune system. A good case example is astragalus. Astragalus is an herb that, in the cultures that eat a lot of this astragalus, they say, eat this herb and live forever. Of course, it's forever is implying, though, but they've monitored generations, see those people eating astragalus lived longer. Remarkably longer. And so we started isolating certain ingredients in astragalus, and we found out that the chemistry of astragalus improves the immune system significantly, and it helps the body because of what's called the telomeres. So as the cells divide, as each replication of our cell division, there's only 70 people in the world that have reached the age of 110 currently living. So we have some kind of a finite or limited number in which the cells will replicate and divide. But those that fall short of that lofty 110 plus age are dying prematurely, probably because the telomeres have shortened and they've been mutated, and it's causing a premature disease condition, and it could cause cancer. So we know that stem cells are very helpful and they can build up the body, but the very same stem cells can be altered and changed through either toxins in the environment or improper food habits. So what we're looking at is herbs like astragalus and turmeric, and we're looking at things that include diethyl in cruciferous vegetables. We know that wasabi, for example, has 40 times more isocyanates than broccoli, which is amazing, because we've discovered that it actually reduces the rate of cancer. These people eating, particularly the plant form of wasabi, not just the wasabi sauce that you get at the restaurant. So we're really thrilled to see that some of the ancient Indian herbs, the ancient Chinese herbs, and some of the Amazon herbs. I just got back from Brazil, and I spent a 3-week tour going through some of the plant-based herbs and things. And it's really interesting that we see differences when we put people on these plant-based herbs, a whole foods diet, an exercise program, and then we measure their blood chemistries for good and bad xenoestrogens, toxic estrogens that are unmetabolized in the blood. We look at the ratios of testosterone. We look at about 10 different hormones and all their metabolites, as many as we have seen is 40 different estrogen metabolites, and we're seeing these changes. So it's interesting that we see improvements in the blood chemistry and the biomarkers. So maybe that's why the immune system is being fortified by these herbs, which, you know, there was no pharmaceutical company behind the herbs because they couldn't patent them. They're naturally present in the environment. Mm-hmm. So we had to go back and look at the studies and the research and try and verify, did folklore prove why these people had a lower incidence of cancer, or, you know, was there something inherent in these herbs that really transformed the immune system? And we suspect some of the folklore is true.
Well, typically we do find that, right? A lot of the work that Greg Braden has been doing, a lot of the work that Bruce Lipton has been doing, you know, they're tying in the work that you're doing, they're tying in this ancient knowledge, this ancient wisdom from our ancestors with scientific evidence. And they're finding that a lot of these things that we have thought to be folklore, a lot of these things that we thought to be stories are actually proving through scientific evidence to be true. And it seems that it's always leading us back to nature in one way or another.
That's right.
Is that right?
You know, it's interesting. We looked at plants that stimulate the release of certain very important phytochemicals and enzymes. And we suspected that if you could increase nitric oxide, which we've discovered nitric oxide, nitrogen, oxygen, is the most potent natural free radical scavenger. And it's inherently present in plant foods that are rich in nitrates. Now, when you say nitrates, people say, oh, but I've heard cured meats have nitrates and we should avoid nitrates in the water supply. But we've recently discovered through the work of Dr. Paul Bryant and his work with Lou Ignario, who won the Nobel Prize, researching the work that later led to the discovery of Viagra, of all things, right? But they discovered that nitric oxide is a most potent natural free radical scavenger, which means that when there's cellular tissue breakdown in the case of cancer, these cells are splitting off and electrons are splitting off, and they're unpaired electrons, so they're looking for another electron to steal, and so it'll steal it from a healthy cell, and so it keeps changing, and tissue repetition, that is tissue breakdown, continues. But if you were just simply able to add in massive amounts of free electrons from nitric oxide, then the unpaired electron will match up and it'll stop this kind of a repetitive tissue breakdown situation. So it turns out that kale, Swiss chard, beets, arugula, and pomegranate, and spinach, if I didn't mention that, are among the richest sources of nitric oxide. Oh, wow. So you see this big bowl of food. I've got Swiss chard in there, I've got some spinach and arugula. I mean, it's this massive raw plant thing that I've got going on in here.
He's been taking it around the office and sharing it with people.
I mean, you know,
it's beautiful.
I have a client downstairs who's challenged with diabetes, and one of my educators is working with him now and working through his diet, and you know, he's been steeped in a Western world of meat and eggs and cheese and thinking that diabetes was all about avoiding sugar. I wish it was that easy. It's not just reducing sugar. It's really the oils and the fats and the meats and the cholesterol that influence it. So I gave him a taste of this. He said, wow, I could do this. He said, there's no meat in it? Yeah. He said, wow, that's pretty good. You want to have a taste? There's an extra fork. One edge there hasn't been tried. It's pretty good. What do you think?
Nice. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that...
This fork?
Yeah.
You want me to eat it? All right. Oh, heck yeah.
Just dig in and tell me what you think. There's no oil added. It's all whole food. It's got some herbs and spices and hummus and chipotle and chilies and. What do you think?
That is amazing. The sauce is amazing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's you know.
So what's all in the sauce?
Well, it's a miso sauce. It's a fat-free miso, and delicious. It's fermented. So fermented misos purported to be good for you. I encourage my clients, and I use what's called laser-focused concentration scripts. So they listen to these, they download them to their Android phone, they go to my website, growyoungandslim.com, and then what they do is they reinforce preparing their foods each day, eating whole natural foods, having soups and fruits and vegetables, and then the body, it just starts to want to improve. The immune system improves, the energy improves, at least the quality of life improves.
Right.
It's difficult to make the leap of faith that if a patient who has cancer is diagnosed, and if they do this program with herbs and supplements and exercise and power of the mind and eating whole fresh foods, the very least they're going to have a better quality of life. They're going to have more energy, they're going to look good, they're going to feel good. Now, can we actually tell them that with this program that they're going to have an improved survival rate? Only God would know this. We don't know. If it was me, would I do it? I do it every day of my life, because I believe that we're all exposed to mutated cells, conditions and situations that put us at risk that if a cancer does develop in the body, our amazing immune system and white blood cells and antibodies go to that area and generally detect that cancer and stop the tumor growth. The unfortunate thing is that sometimes these tumors are not detected in your own cellular tissue. So Dr. Dipnarine Maharaj has developed a novel approach that I'll talk about at the summit, where we can actually isolate white blood cells from healthy young 22-year-olds and then infuse them into cancer patients who have metastasized, which has got to be the worst form of cancer, because once it starts spreading throughout the body, it's not so easy and localized in one little tumor or an area of the breast or the prostate and so forth. So once it spreads, there is no solution in general medical profession, because even if they do chemo or radiation therapy, how is it going to find all these cells that have spread to the spleen, the pancreas, the brain? It'll tend to settle in some target organ. So what we're looking at is, what can we do to waken up your own white blood cells, and how can we infuse new white blood cells that they have to be tissue matched? It's quite a complex process, and yet it's been shown now in the early studies, and I'm really excited, intrigued by this research, that this may be kind of the new frontier beyond what we have currently attempted with, say, traditional therapies.
Wow. Well, this is exciting stuff, and I know you're on the leading edge of what you're doing as well, and I know you've been helping many people for decades, and so I'm just honored to be sitting here with you and having you share your wonderful message. You gave some great tips today about people facing cancer, and I hope this helps you, and I really hope that you share this with other people, because we're here to just help share this information with you, because we really care about our goal with Integrated Health International is within the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years to start seeing the numbers of people being diagnosed with cancer reversing instead of increasing.
Right.
And to me, that is what drives me in all the work that we're doing. And so I'm looking forward to having you speak at the Cure to Cancer conference in San Diego, and I hope you'll join us, and I hope you'll connect with Dr. Delgado. In the meantime, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
They can go to growyoungandslim.com. That's growyoungandslim.com, or drop us an email at age, like AGE, doc, DOC, 2004 at yahoo.com.
Excellent. And leave us your comments and questions below this video. Hit the like button. Please share this. And hopefully we'll see you at the conference in April. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.